Okay, you got out. But that papier-mâché head in your bunk didn't fool them for long. Better get the lead out. The briars tear at your prison duds. The owls mock you. You're thirsty, you're winded, and used all your smokes up bribing the screws. Worse yet, they got the dogs after you. Not just dogs, bloodhounds. And not just bloodhounds, Hollywood bloodhounds. What, you ask, are Hollywood bloodhounds? You run, I'll explain. Writing in the AKC Gazette in January 1977, Roger Karras evoked the image of a pack of relentless bloodhounds pursuing their quarry pell-mell through heavy woods, sure to overtake him and tear him to shreds. Okay, cut. That's the Hollywood bloodhound. The real bloodhound relentlessly seeks to please her handler by finding whatever it is she's been asked to find. She'd never attack at the end of a hunt and is far more likely to lick her quarry than bite it. The Hollywood bloodhounds run wildly through the woods in a non-stop chase, spewing saliva in anticipation of blood. The real bloodhound operates at the end of a lead that is attached to a D-ring on a harness. She leads her handler and never runs ahead. And the drooling part? Okay, we'll give him that. The Hollywood hounds bugle and howl their way through the chase, striking fear in their quarry and announcing their hunger. The real bloodhound almost always trails silently, and for good reason. What law enforcement types would want to come upon someone who may be armed and dangerous with a pack of hounds clamoring like drunken sailors on the town? Hollywood hounds work in large packs during the chase. The real bloodhound almost always trails alone. Occasionally, two hounds with two handlers might be deployed, but most trails are run by single dogs. And there's good reason to burst the bubble on this bloodthirsty hounds myth. Most of the trails bloodhounds follow are made by lost children, campers, folks who get confused or have cognitive issues, and in all cases, their job is to locate, not subdue. I'm Bud Bacone. Join me for a closer look at the bloodhound. Ancient, gentle, friendly, tireless, and yes, the greatest sniffing machines ever engineered. Uh-oh, that's the shop steward. Lunch!
What is a dog? How much is a dog worth?
The sport of dogs is one of the cleanest and best regulated of all the organized sports.
I am 50% setter, Irish setter.
Today, there is no question of the dog's place in society.
Isn't that so, Lassie?
Down and Back. Stories from the AKC archives.
This is the show for you.
With Bud Bacone.
This pup is more than a pal.
This is it. NYC. La Grande Palme. The city so nice they named it twice. And on this night in June 2022, New York was putting on the dog. Tonight, the Westminster Kennel Club was going to name the Best in Show. There they are, the finalists. One each from the terrier group, the working group, sporting group, herding group, non-sporting group, toy group, and the hound group. Don't mind me, I eat when I'm nervous. Shh, here we go.
The Best in Show winner is the Bloodhound.
Okay, that was a first. The first, and at press time, the only time a bloodhound has won Best in Show at Westminster, joining nearly 24 other proud one-time winning breeds. Among them, the Yorkshire Terrier, English Setter, Rough Collie, Siberian Husky, and the Whippet.
Now, what is that? That's a Bloodhound, isn't it?
I think this is a tremendous dog, and I would say maybe in 2 to 3 years this could be a champion dog.
It was a Bloodhound victory that may just have been prophesized 2 decades earlier in Christopher Guest's mockumentary, Best in Show. Give or take the creative input of Fred Willard's character.
You know what would be funny? I don't know if they can do this, just an idea off the top of my head. Why didn't he put the Bloodhound, put on one of those Sherlock Holmes hats and put a little pipe in his mouth? Are they ever allowed to do anything like that, dress up a dog in a funny way?
No, that's it's not quite what the purpose of these shows
But
is.
it would, I think it would really get the crowd going. You know what I mean? The Sherlock Holmes hat with the pipe. I don't know if you could make it look like smoke's coming out of the pipe.
I think that would be a little dangerous.
I'd get a kick out of it.
And it's true. The dog playing Hubert, the Bloodhound in the film, was no slouch. He was champion Quiet Creek's Stand By Me. Trumpet won Best in Show because, in the view of the judge, he best exemplified the Bloodhound breed standard. Yet for centuries, it's the Bloodhound's scenting superpowers that have made it a star. To explain why, what do you say we tour the olfactory? Yep, we're inside the nose of a Bloodhound, who mercifully is sleeping. Where you or I might lean heavily on sight and hearing to interpret the world, dogs use scent to read their environment. Where we humans have 5 or 6 million scent receptors in our noses, dogs, depending on the breed and frankly who you ask, might have 100 million. And this guy, a Bloodhound, might have 300 million. That doesn't just mean that dogs smell the same things we do, but with greater intensity. It means they pick out scents that we can't discern. Where you or I might smell chocolate chip cookies, a dog can smell the chocolate chips, the flour, the eggs, butter, and whether it's salted or not, and the tiny chip of fingernail that somehow got into the batter. Dog owners understand that canines say hello by sniffing one another, at which time they can detect the gender of the other dog as well as clues as to the other dog's age and health status. When your dog is sniffing the base of a street lamp, or reading the Post, if you will, she's getting all the neighborhood gossip in one big whiff. Now over there, just between the roof of the mouth and the bottom of the nasal passage, damn, I forgot my laser pointer. Well, trust me. Over there, dogs have a special scent gizmo called the vomeronasal organ, aka the VNO, aka Jacobson's organ. It has special receptors that focus on detective pheromones, which can be nifty for picking up sex hormone signals. But some dog handlers believe it's also helpful in search and rescue work. When people are frightened, as a child would be when lost in the woods, their hormones surge. The VNO may serve to help the canine pick up that specific scent. Well, let's beat it before somebody sneezes. Mara Bovson, writing for the AKC Gazette of May 2006, consulted Dr. Lawrence Myers of Alabama's Auburn University, who'd been studying and investigating scenting dogs for a quarter of a century. Myers concedes that estimates vary as to the sensitivity of the canine nose, but he cited one study in which dogs were able to detect one particular chemical, a sulfide compound developed to detect leaks in underground oil and gas pipelines, at just 1 part per quintillion. For those keeping track at home, that's a 1 followed by 18 zeros. As an object lesson, and who doesn't love one of those, Professor Myers invites you to imagine that if you took the state of Washington and filled it to a depth of 2 to 3 feet of water, then added a teaspoon of the chemical and gave it a stir, that would be 1 part per quintillion. Detecting that scent is one thing, but a dog must also be able to process it. Let's examine what happens when a bloodhound sniffs something. Back into the nose. As a dog takes a sniff, it draws in volatile oils or chemicals into the outermost part of the nose. The 2 external nostrils have widened to let the chemicals into the nasal chambers. These chambers are covered with a mucous membrane, which contains all those olfactory cells that have odor receptor proteins. Making sense of the data is part of the dog's brain cell called the olfactory bulb. As one doctor of veterinary medicine explained, humans barely have such a thing, while the canine brain is all olfactory bulb. In there, the canine's brain forms an odor image, far more detailed than a photograph is to a human. But with the capacity to discern who knows how many scents at once, how does the canine brain manage to focus on just one? Scientists explain it this way. The same way you or I might be walking on a crowded city sidewalk and with hundreds, thousands of people around, recognize someone we know. Bloodhounds are wired to play their own kind of Where's Waldo, but with their nose. And what does the working bloodhound scent that you and I could never dream of detecting? Human skin cells, for one of the main ingredients of household dust. Evidently, we shed them at a rate of about 40,000 skin cells per minute. They're called rafts, and each one carries bacteria which create an odor unique to the individual. Besides skin rafts, the bloodhound might also detect vapors and gases from bacterial digestion. In a woody or grassy area, additional moisture often enhances the process, creating even more scent. Oh, and bacteria from human underarms and nether regions, none of which would be daisy fresh among those who are lost or hoping not to be found. For all that's known about the canine scenting ability, so much remains unknown. How a dog can train to scent, how it can process so quickly, how it picks one scent out of thousands. Humans don't know, and the dogs aren't saying. And if you think the bloodhound's engineering is something, just wait till you get a sniff of its backstory.
You're listening to Down and Back, stories from the AKC archives.
Fair to say the bloodhound's origin story is as much a mystery as its scenting superpowers. Oh, but there are theories. Some infer bloodhound in Homer's Odyssey, when the hero, disguised in beggar's rags, returns after 20 years. His old dog, Argos, no spring chicken at 20-something, recognizes him instantly. Or sniffs him out. Elsewhere, it's written of the very same canine.
There was not a wild beast in the forest that could get away from him when he was once on its tracks.
In the 3rd century, Roman historian Claudius Alienus wrote of a hound of unrivaled scenting powers, so intensely devoted to the work that he could not be pulled off the trail until his quarry was found. Please note that there might be a test later. It's also believed that various groups, including groups of monks, meticulously refined the breed, so much so that it came to be called the blooded hound. Blooded being a nod to its aristocratic blood. Over the next millennium or so, somebody misplaced a syllable, and it's been bloodhound ever since. But not before the breed became associated with the Abbey of St. Hubert in Belgium, hence the name Chien de Saint-Hubert, as the French call them even today. Each year, the abbots of St. Hubert presented 3 pair of the hounds annually to the King of France as a token of allegiance. See also under S for sucking up. The king in turn used them to trail wolves and boar. It's suspected that ancestors of today's bloodhound crossed the Channel with the Normans in 1066. Over the centuries, the breed became a beloved companion to the hunting elite, enough so that in 1848, lyricist Barry Cornwall and composer Chevalier Sigismund Newcomb joined forces to create the immortal song, The Bloodhound, rendered here in their debut performance by the Down and Back Victorian Musical Society.
Rise, Herod, my hound, from the stranger's floor. Old friend, we must wander the world.
Okay, thank you. We'll call you.
Hey, I think that went pretty well.
That was the farewell performance of the Down and Back Victorian Musical Society. Oy. This should be
Oh.
Yes, in the back.
So how did the Bloodhound get into police work and search and rescue and all that?
Up. We're getting to that. This is a good time to return to the Westminster Dog Show 2022, where Trumpet is poised to make history. Here we can appreciate the incredible work of canine engineering built around the world's greatest scenting machine. Weisenheimers like to call the Bloodhound a nose with a dog attached. That dog is remarkable unto itself. It's powerful, with a neck, shoulders, and chest designed to move with the head down and nose oscillating near the ground, and 6 kinds of stamina to trail her quarry tirelessly as hours and miles tick by. One writer suggested the known record for a single bloodhound trailing its quarry was 138 miles, which explains why handlers don't let them run loose. No human could keep up. Not to mention the breed's single-mindedness when working. The same author, Roger Karras, noted that the Bloodhound has no road sense at all. With its nose down and undivided attention paid to its scent, she's oblivious to the dangers of the road. The number of Bloodhounds, he adds, who've run smack into trees cannot be counted. Its long, droopy ears swirl particles up to where its nose can deal with them, and the loose, wrinkled skin extends its brow, protecting her eyes in dense, low brush. No question, this is an incredible working hound. But what about here on our street, USA? What kind of family pet does the Bloodhound make? Well, Bloodhounds enjoy the company of adults, kids, and other dogs. They're gentle by nature and even like to cuddle. They're also a lot of dog. We mentioned they're strong and energetic, standing up to 27 inches at the shoulder and weighing up to 110 pounds. They tend to be thoroughly dedicated to the work of scenting, and therein lies their challenge. Her strong scenting drive, tenacity, and stamina can be a triple whammy to the unsuspecting owner. She'll require a lot of walking, and by walking I mean sniffing. And by a lot of, well, remember the 138 miles thing we just talked about. She'll tend to drool, and obedience training these sensitive sleuths can be a challenge. Bloodhound ownership is a high bar, but owners who rise to it tend to be richly rewarded. Okay. Sleuthing, search and rescue, and so forth. In short, the Bloodhound trailing humans. Though the Bloodhound has likely been around for a millennium or two, history doesn't record its tracking humans until about 500 years ago, when a number of Elizabethan eggheads first used them to trail poachers and sheep stealers. Since then, it's been used to track countless thousands of people: criminals, escaped convicts, lost campers and hikers, seniors with dementia. And in 19th century America, they were used to track runaway slaves. In the case of the former, its more benevolent people-searching role, stories abound. And for that, more than a century ago, one dog would become the household name in Bloodhound sleuthing.
What's the matter? What is it?
Another case for Nick Carter, Master Detective.
Nick Carter. We're cheating a bit. It wasn't until 1943 that the Mutual Broadcast System launched the Nick Carter Master Detective radio series, which would lay on the cheese for 12 years. By then, Americans had been consuming Nick Carter dime novels and pulp magazines for more than half a century. It was in 1901 that the name was commandeered by the handler of a real-life, four-legged master detective. In real life, his name was loaned to a crime-fighting bloodhound from Kentucky who, teamed with his handler G.V. Mulliken, became an American legend. The canine Nick Carter was born in 1899 and would be credited with 650 fines, with his nose helping to send 126 criminals to jail. So famous were the human bloodhound team that crowds would gather to watch them work. This canine was especially skilled at tracking very cold or very old scent trails, in one case following one for 55 miles. For budding bloodhound owners, let's circle that memo from earlier, lots of walks. In 1909, Mulligan and Nick were called to the scene of a fire, almost certainly an arson. Trouble was, the barn had burned down more than 4 days earlier. It seemed impossible that even the legendary Nick Carter would be able to make any sense of the residual odors. His formidable nose to the ground, the big red dog circled the charred ruins. Then, suddenly, he lifted his tail and was off, leading Mulligan to a farmhouse about a mile away. Inside, the fugitive's heart sank at the sight of the bloodhound. The jig was up. By the turn of the 20th century, bloodhounds had become a conventional means of scenting out fugitives who might otherwise foil the most dogged detectives. From 1885.
The fugitive was run to cover yesterday by the bloodhounds at a point about 15 miles from the scene of the murder.
From 1899.
Bloodhounds were employed to find the two men accused of trying to cause the train wreck, tracking them several miles to a log cabin where they broke down and confessed.
Petros, Tennessee, 1977.
Following a chase of more than 50 hours, the bone-weary escaped convict James Earl Ray, the man convicted of shooting Martin Luther King Jr., was discovered by the bloodhound Buttercup, hiding under leaves in the deep Tennessee woods. Buttercup had succeeded where searchers, using modern technology and Huey helicopters, had failed.
No less heroic is the bloodhound's record for search and rescue work. One August night in Spring Valley, New York, 100-year-old retired merchant Sol Mendelson disappeared during an evening walk. The chief of police was summoned from a neighboring town with two of his famous bloodhounds, Punch and Judy. Judy having won Best in Breed the year before at Westminster.
Quickly she picked up the scent. Baying in triumph, she ran headlong into the deep thicket to a rock a mile from the house, and there, sitting on the rock slapping mosquitoes, was Mr. Mendelson. It had taken Judy just 15 minutes to locate her quarry.
Bloodhounds often do what humans and science aspire to do, and sometimes what they do just can't be replicated. To illustrate, let's take one more quick jaunt. Here, to Petersburg, Indiana, about 100 years ago. Bonus points if you recognize it as the hometown of the Brooklyn Dodgers great Gil Hodges. The town had a problem. Someone had been picking up rocks on the street and chucking them through the windows of unsuspecting homeowners. Police were stumped, and soon a call went out to C.V. Mulligan, who made the long trip to Petersburg with his legendary bloodhounds. A newspaper account picks up the story.
Arriving there about 11 o'clock at night, his dogs, Nick Carter and Rake, took the trail from a rock lying on the floor of one of the residences. The rock had been carried from the river and still retained the scent of the criminal that threw it through the window. At this instance, Nick proved his blood and training, scented the rock, went to the street, and picked up the trail and carried it to the next damaged house. There, Rake was given the same test, and the two dogs worked out the trail to every house that had been molested, struck a turnpike, and led 1.5 miles in the country, and landed 2 boys in separate houses. One dog stopped at the first house, the other going to the next, where in both cases the boys were up awaiting the arrival of the dogs, as they heard the dogs had been sent for.
The young men confessed, and it was off to the hooskow with them. Some are frustrated that science has never been able to replicate the olfactory miracle that is the bloodhound, or grasp her ability to identify a single scent among thousands and follow it so relentlessly. Is it not a failure of human innovation that modern crime fighting and search and rescue so often relies on the same four-legged, tail-wagging technology that our grandparents' relied on? Bloodhound fanciers and dog lovers everywhere know better. The bloodhound ain't broke, and nobody needs to fix it. Feed it? Oh yes. And trust me on this, plenty of walks.
Down and Back, stories from the AKC archives. Visit akc.org to learn everything you could ever want to know about responsible dog ownership. Follow AKC on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at American Kennel Club. On X, at AKC Dog Lovers. And tell us what you thought of the show. If you're new to the show, subscribe with your favorite podcast provider to catch up on all of our past episodes. Founded in 1884, the not-for-profit AKC is the recognized and trusted expert in breed, health, and training information for all dogs. We actively advocate for responsible dog ownership and are dedicated to advancing dog sports. We actively advocate for responsible dog ownership and are dedicated to advancing dog sports. Excuse me. Research for Down and Back is provided by the AKC Library and Archives, the only national repository dedicated to the sport and enjoyment of the purebred dog. Learn more about the collections at akc.org/library.